Hello, please meet today's guest, Victoria Vaughan.
It is actually inspired by a book by Antoine Saint-Exupéry called The Little Prince. And
Yes,
inside of this
I'm
book, the little prince is traveling across the universe. And over time, he finds a planet where he meets a fox. And also, he has a rose on that planet. So everything he loves is located at that planet. And the name of this planet is B612. That's the idea behind the name, like a place of love.
What happens when you take a media executive who built a 15 million reader publication with 200 employees, but had zero equity, and she decides to finally bet on herself? Today's guest, Victoria Vaughan, founder of B612, a PR firm named after the tiny planet in The Little Prince where everything you love lives. Victoria's journey took her from St. Petersburg, Russia, where she scaled Cointelegraph into one of the largest crypto media outlets in the world, to Brooklyn, New York, where she now runs a boutique PR firm that punches way above its weight. Here's what makes this conversation different. Victoria will tell you exactly how early stage founders can do their own PR effectively for about $20 a month. She'll share how she went from competing with 1,000 PR firms in New York to just 5 or 10 by making one smart decision. And she'll explain why being an introvert in the public relations business actually works in her favor. If you've ever wondered when to hire a PR firm, how to get press coverage on a bootstrap budget, or how to push through the fear of starting something new, this episode is for you. Let's get into it. Hello, Victoria, and welcome to the podcast.
Hi, thank you for having me here.
Absolutely. I always start with a context question, which is everybody's always curious, me too. Where are you originally from and where do you live now?
I'm originally from Russia, St. Petersburg, and now I live in New York.
Probably a big change.
Very big change.
So the part of New York you live in is Brooklyn, right?
Yes, I live in Williamsburg.
Do you have to go far? Is your company in Manhattan? How far is your company from where you live?
Everyone is operating remote, so generally I just work from my home, but also I feel like a lot of companies in the industry now have office spaces. At the same time, after COVID, not many people are used to going into the offices. So what I tend to see is that there are companies who have offices and almost no one there. So I have a lot of friends who are just always welcoming me to come to the office spaces and just work from there. So, when I get tired from working from my apartment all the time, I just go like to an office space of my friends or clients or partners.
That's awesome. And you go everywhere by subway, so you don't have to worry too much about
Yeah.
parking.
New York is not a place to have a car.
The general field in which you are operating is PR, public relations.
Right.
And your current firm is called B612.
Yeah, correct.
So just not to be too weird about it, but B612 sounds like the name of a vitamin.
It is actually inspired by a book by Antoine Saint-Exupéry called The Little Prince. And
Yes.
inside of this
I'm
book, the little prince is traveling across the universe. And over time, he finds a planet where he meets a fox. And also, he has a rose on that planet. So everything he loves is located at that planet. And the name of this planet is B612. So that's the idea behind the name, like a place of love. And one of the values like for my company and one of the like mission we have is that we always try to be really close with our clients and almost act as an extension of the team and not be like someone from the outside like trying just to do their own thing, but we always find more and more ways to help our clients. And it's very often not even only about PR, but we also try to help with other partnerships and with investments. And whenever we can help, I always try to do so. So like one of my values is to have like those genuine connections with companies we work with.
I think that's the most interesting derivation of a name of a company I've ever heard, and I am familiar with that book. Love that book. You know, this company you started after you'd already had some experience working at other companies. Tell us a little bit about that, and that sort of led up to the creation of B612.
Yeah, so I started my journey working for a tech startup in Russia, and it was more of a fintech retail startup. And while I was working there, we were going to a lot of international conferences because the business model was targeting to work with big retail chains all over the world. And the main product was the like an interactive POS terminal with a screen. And the idea was that people, while they are waiting at the cash desk, can interact with this screen and like get some special offers and so on. And it was back in 2011. You know, now we have like those interactive like POS terminals everywhere, but back then it was super super early on and very interesting to work like with that company. So we were going to France, to New York, to all the conferences, and at one of the events I met a person who back then in 2011 I think introduced me to the idea of Bitcoin and cryptocurrency. I have never heard anything about it before, and it was something like really innovative and interesting to me. So after this conference, we just like stayed in touch with that person and became friends. He started building a set of products in this industry back then. And after like the initial startup I was working for, we had like several pilot projects, but unfortunately after that it never went like into real commercial projects. So it was feeling like we didn't have a product market fit. So I made a decision that I wanted to transition to something else. So I joined like this person to build things for digital asset industry. And back then, one of the companies he started was a media company. So it's a news outlet about all cryptocurrency news, blockchain news. I joined that project initially as a project manager and was responsible for developing like the publishing platform and for some of the partnerships we were doing. And then pretty quickly I was promoted to the CEO position, and next 7 years I spent with that company scaling it to like one of the top positions on the market. When I was leaving, we had over 15 million in readership and a team of over 200 people. So a lot of my experience is coming from managing a media company, understanding how the editorial processes work. And I also gained pretty significant network in the space. So like later on, for me, it was a very logical step to start a PR firm.
Was that company in St. Petersburg? You were doing all that in St. Petersburg, right?
I was based in St. Petersburg. Company was not based in St. Petersburg. All our editorial team again worked remotely, and everything was targeting international market. We were always producing news in English. Later on, like most part of the editorial team was based in the UK. I was traveling a lot, so yeah. Even back then, I gained a lot of experience managing everything remotely.
And that was before COVID, so
Yes,
you got
long
an
before COVID.
you got an early start
I
on the
remember we were having calls via Skype mostly.
Skype. Yeah,
Yeah.
you made this transition from working for someone else to having your own company, um, and actually that happened before you founded B612 because you were already running a company out of St. Petersburg. So um, that's a big transition uh, th- where you um, stopped working for someone else and now you were the boss. Um, what was what was good and what was not good about that transition for you?
Yeah. Well, I think I got really lucky with like this initial experience helping building Cointelegraph because I had a leading role and I had a lot of freedom with experimentation on who to hire, how to build things. But I was not risking anything like on my own. So it was almost like I had a startup and I had freedom to do different things. But I did not have like personal financial risks. And this is like also good and bad, right? I did get a lot of experience. I did have a good motivation system. So I like did like quite well with Cointelegraph, but at the same time, I never had any equity in the company or anything like that. So it was not a situation where, for example, I could get like an exit, or in the situation I leave the company, I would not continue like having anything to do with the revenue and the company, right? And like after all those years, I yes, had a transition like in myself that I would want to start to try to build something by myself as well. For a very long time, I did not picture myself as a founder. And partially, I think because of this very popular like media image of successful entrepreneurs who usually very early on start building things while they're still in college, in high school, like start right after school, they start buying, selling, like doing projects, and then everything grows. And to be honest, I was never like that. I did not feel like I had like this kind of entrepreneur mindset while I was like in high school, in university, or even like early on in my career. I was always more like very rational, systematic, like I can organize things very well, but it's almost like I did not feel creative enough or like good enough, because these founders, they have this image like of people who have always full of genius ideas, who understand market really well, right? But like in the end, over time, I realized already, but okay, I have already done it. I have built a company, so why now? Why not now try by myself? So I really started feeling like this tension, like okay, this company idea like was not created by myself. What if all this experience is just luck, you know? And I really started like questioning, okay, what can I do outside of this ecosystem? So, and that then at some point, it was a moment when I really felt I'm ready to continue by myself and to try it out. And definitely, I think it takes a big like mindset transition as well, even on a cultural level. For example, in Russia, I think the overall idea is that every business like have to be profitable and successful. In Russia, for example, venture market almost like non-existent. So there is no such model there as in US, that you can raise funds and then your company can be not profitable for many, many years, and you can just raise and then again and again. So the primary model in Russia is that if you build business, like it has to be successful and it has to be profitable. So with that in mind, like culture of making mistakes is not that big and popular in Russia, while in US I see that like investors have that idea, okay, founder will not succeed with this project, but still founders are able to raise again for new products and then they succeed. And overall idea behind like making mistakes, it's totally fine. It's better to try to do something rather than sit and never try to do something. So I think I started like also spending some part of my time internationally in Europe and in US and seeing how people think about it here. And I think over time, step by step, it like transition mindset as well.
When you were the CEO, when you were promoted to the CEO, why would they not give you any equity? Um, the whole point of equity for the CEO is, incentive to, you know, build it, grow it, make it successful, and maybe ultimately sell it. I'm stuck on the fact that they didn't give you any equity.
I did have a bonus system that was tied to the revenue of the company, but like while I was working for the company, right? But I think like media company is still not like a tech product that you like want to sell over time. And I think the founder like of this media company, he still owns it and he never wanted like to sell that company. So like this exit strategy would be like quite impossible anyway. And for me at the time, I was just not even familiar with these kind of setups that you can get an equity in the company. So from my side, I never even like thought about it. So I ended up in such place.
You've got this vision that, okay, I might be ready. I think I'm ready to be a founder. You hadn't actually done PR before then. Is that correct?
Yes, that's right.
So how did you go and not only make the plunge of being a founder, but decided to do something in a space that was adjacent to where you were at best, but wasn't something you'd actually done. And you started a PR firm, and it's doing great. How did you know, where did it come from that, okay, I'm going to do PR? Sorry for the interruption, but in addition to the podcast, you might also be interested in the online program I've created for startup founders called Who Says You Can't Start Up? In it, I've tried to capture everything I've learned in the course of founding and running 9 startups over 37 years. It's 4 courses, each one about 15 video lessons, plus over 130 downloadable resources across all 4 courses. Each course individually is only $375. The QR code will take you where you can learn more. Now, back to the podcast.
Well, first of all, I think I still did not feel like I wanted to build a product or a startup for which I would have to raise funds and then be in this cycle of like raising again and again. So I wanted to build something that I would be able to grow organically by myself without attracting external investments. And I think like PR or marketing agency is perfect service business which you can grow by yourself, and that is a good consistent revenue stream and cash flow. So this was like one criteria. And then also I was just like looking on the market, like what kind of companies are there. I had several friends who had PR firms, so I chatted like with them to understand better how exactly it works. And then like initially I started just experimenting, like helping some of my friends who had companies in the space just to try and help them get some media coverage, like even for free, just to understand, okay, how do you pitch a company? How do you connect with the journalist? Not when you manage a company, but when you actually have to interact with journalists, like who, for example, you do not know. I did know like a pretty big number of journalists in the space already. So again, when I was pitching like some of the stories for my friends, I knew who to contact initially. And then over time, when you onboard more and more of the clients, you have more experts to introduce to the journalists. And for the journalists, for example, when you have a strong speaker who is a strong expert on some point, for journalists, it's a valuable input, because usually when they work on the articles, they want someone to comment on the news flow. So when you can provide like interesting comments for them, then like you build this kind of long-term win-win connection with the journalists. And later on, when you need to pitch a story, you know, like where to go. So at first, I just experimented a little bit with placing these kind of stories and commentaries for my friends. And then when I had like a better understanding how exactly like pitching works, what kind of journalists write about what, I onboarded like the first client. And after that, I hired a PR manager who started helping me managing client accounts. And after that, I was more focused on business development, building partnerships that would be referring clients to me. And even now, I would say maybe 90% of clients come through referrals, not through like cold sales or direct sales. So even now, I'm mostly focused on building these kind of partnerships, like with whom we have like win-win cooperation. For example, some design agencies or VC firms. Sometimes we would do PR workshops for the portfolio companies of the VC firms. And after that, usually some of the portfolio companies come to work with us. Then the VC sees, okay, like they did good PR for that company, and they start leading more clients to you. And of course, when a company is introduced by the investors, the level of trust is really high, and the conversion rates of this kind of referrals is really good compared like to when I think companies are trying to do cold outreach.
At what point in the process did you move to New York?
I actually moved to New York before starting a PR firm. And before starting a PR firm, I also did a startup with a couple of my former colleagues. We were building a wallet for Cardano ecosystem. Cardano is one of the leading blockchains, and back then they were at the point when they wanted to launch the smart contracts. So our idea was to be the leading wallet for the Cardano ecosystem of products. So my first experience was that, more like technological business. But then we faced some roadblocks with Cardano itself, because at that point they never released those smart contracts when they were promising, and like we kind of stuck in terms of technological development. But we did get some good traction in terms of initial user growth, and even like there were a lot of users who were just swapping tokens inside of our wallet. So we were able to sell this wallet to the launchpad we were launching with. And then after that, I started a PR firm. So after I moved to New York, first I experimented with launching this wallet, and I also just found a consulting job here in US. So I was like doing these two things in parallel, and then after the wallet, I started a PR firm.
You have a lot of courage to so speaking of which, were you nervous that you would be able to differentiate your PR firm? In New York, there are probably 1,000 PR firms.
Yes, but when we were starting, first of all, we are not targeting all markets, and all our first clients were in cryptocurrency, like digital asset space. And of course, there are some agencies who specialize in working with this market, but like not as many as if you are just a generic PR firm that works with any kind of account. And secondly, as I mentioned before, I did have pretty good network in the space, because before that I was managing like one of the largest media outlet. And yeah, I guess niching down your targeted customers you want to work with, and having a strong profile in the industry definitely help to kick off things.
What did you learn in the process of being a founder for the first time? What 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 things didn't go the way you expected, and you had to pivot, and of course that always is a learning experience. So uh, both good and bad. What things did you learn in the first founding process?
Mm-hmm. Well, first of all, of course, there is a big difference when you were working for the brand that is already recognized in the industry, and while like it was helping me that I am associated with the brand, it's not like I'm working for it anymore. So imagine the difference when you represent a media company that produces news, when you like come to events, or when you want to have a meeting with someone and you work for the media company, like people are very eager to take a meeting with you, and it's really easy to come to events and everyone just comes to you and wants to talk to you. While like when you say I have a PR firm, it's not always that attractive to people. So in terms of networking, for example, I do see a big difference in how people like react to your introduction and to who you are. So it is like, I would say, more difficult to do the networking, but again, over time, you just learn what are the most efficient ways to introduce yourself, to connect with people. And my approach is like always try to find ways you can help someone you talk to. And when you follow through and really make introduction you promise to do, or maybe provide a little bit of help, it is like time and energy consuming, but I find that long term it works really well and people recognize you. So usually like to this kind of people, I'm not trying to sell any service directly, but I try to do a little favor. And then I say, okay, like if you know anyone who needs PR, I have a referral program in place. And usually over time, now I have a big network of this kind of people who are just like making introductions to me and bringing like new and new accounts. So I would say for me, the biggest challenge was to push myself to do like this networking, because when I was with Cointelegraph, I was very much focused on building like internal processes and editorial processing. And the main like business model of the media company is gaining as much readership and traffic as you can. And it's not necessarily associated like with doing like business development or a lot of networking. And by nature, I'm more of an introverted person. So for me, it was really challenging to like push myself to start constantly going to events, make connections, talk to people.
That's interesting to hear that somebody who's in the PR space is an introvert.
Yeah, yes.
The 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 P stands for public.
Yes.
Now, what would you say? You made a really good point earlier that the way you initially differentiated yourself was by what market you were helping out. What companies in this blockchain market was who you were focused on, and so that took the, if you just assume maybe my rough estimate was right, 1,000 PR firms in New York, you probably took it down to 5 or 10 at the
Yeah,
most
5 to 10. Yes, you're right.
that you're competing with. So now it's really a whole different game if you're competing with only 5 or 10. And subsequently you told us how you compete, which is that you don't oversell. You try to deliver great service and then depend upon word of mouth and referrals.
Mm-hmm.
Um, So as you've grown, because you've grown quite a bit since those early days, your philosophy, I'm sure has stood firm. Meaning, the way one of the ways you're going to differentiate yourself forever is great service, not a hard sell, and and then people begin to trust you and want you to do more. Is there anything else you're using to differentiate yourself besides that, great service kind of mantra?
I think process-wise, like now we see the media landscape is changing a lot, and a lot of media companies are actually shrinking, and we see a big trend that many journalists starting their own Substack accounts or podcasts. So I feel like current PR, especially in the tech space, is not only about like media platforms. If we like take more of a classic news outlets, but also all the new media kind of thing. So we do also work with podcasts and newsletters and some niche blogs. And what I see is like oftentimes when you go after these kind of like niche publications in terms of or ROI for clients, this kind of niche publication can even be like more valuable than some like big popular media, but not that much that fits the interests of the audience. And internally, we have also built out a lot of AI agents that help us with the processes. So with the whole AI thing, that's a lot of things are happening right now. And I see that many people overuse AI in terms of content. But in my opinion, still AI is not that good when you need to really write a great piece or write a good outreach. It like oftentimes not really personalized and not does not have enough of the hooks. But what AI is great for is that it helps with research a lot. So I have like we used a platform called NA10, which allows to build different AI agent flows. And what we did is that we now have agents that constantly monitor all the media outlets and even like social media and analyzes what kind of trends and stories are coming up. And it also instantly finds the journalists that usually cover these kind of stories but have not written about it yet. So our like AI bots send notifications to our PR team about like all these opportunities. Like, okay, here is an upcoming story. Here are the journalists who might be interested in this story. And we instantly always try to see what kind of client account would be a fit for this story, draft a commentary or brand mention that would be relevant to this story, pitch it very quickly to the journalist. And I think we learned to be almost like a uh, news agency by ourselves. And I find like that with the journalists, the main goal for building long-term relationships is actually help them do their work. And given like journalists, I pitched every day like hundreds of times when they see that you actually can deliver value, some data insights and good experts, over time you like build stronger and stronger connections. And after we built out this system, the number of like media hits we were able to achieve for the clients increased significantly. So I would say this like really helped us work faster and like with writing like all the press releases and these kind of things, as like we're not like I have 5 people on a team. So it's like still a, I would say, boutique firm. And we always try to move really fast because if you like take a look on how big agencies work, I have heard a lot of complaints from my friends who work with bigger agencies that sometimes it would take them a week just to write a press release after the call they had. While like we always try to do it like the same day and like go pitch. So I would say like this automation of a lot of research helps team moves much faster and get more media coverage for our clients.
Hi, the podcast you are listening to is a companion to my recent book, Tech Startup Toolkit: How to Launch Strong and Exit Big. This is the book I wish I'd had, as I was founding and running 8 startups over 35 years. I tell the unvarnished truth about what went right and especially about what went wrong. You could get it from all the usual booksellers. I hope you like it. It's a true labor of love. Now back to the show. So, if you were right now, if you were talking to someone who was the founder of an early stage company, what would you say is the right way for them to try to get media coverage? How should they work with a PR
Mm-hmm.
firm? Because it's so easy to spend a lot of money on PR and not get great results. So in many of my startups, I waited a long time before I brought on PR because I needed to be careful with the money. So what's your advice for what the early stage founder should be thinking about in terms of what they should try to get from a PR firm and you know when they should pull the trigger to sort of hire a firm?
Mm-hmm. I would say I think it makes sense to hire a firm after you did like at least seed round fundraising. And before that, I think it makes more sense for like the founder or someone on the team, just like to try to do it internally or maybe hire a part-time freelancer PR person who has experience of working with startups and usually they do a really good job as well, so securing some initial coverage, and in this way you don't have to like spend too much funds on working with the PR firm. And in terms of what a founder like can make himself, I think overall now like founder-led PR is a big trend, and especially in the age of AI slop, authenticity is like still one of like very important things. And like LinkedIn is growing a lot, and overall the personal brand of the founder really makes a difference when it comes to securing investments and partnerships and first clients. So I would say like this work on personal brand, both for social media and media, you can optimize the process that way, the way that you can repurpose a lot of content, like something you would do for the media, you can then reuse on your LinkedIn, on your Twitter, and everywhere. So what I would start from is just try to push one thought leadership piece a month, and maybe subscribe for a platform like Quoted or Help Reporter Out. On these platforms, there are a lot of journalists who are seeking for the commentary. Commentaries from the experts. So it costs, I think, maybe $20 a month. And you can set up the filters on which topics you want to comment on. Then you start getting alerts. Okay, this journalist who works for that media wants a commentary, and you just submit it on the platform. So this is for like to build out some initial coverage for yourself as an expert in the field. And the second format I mentioned is called thought leadership. A lot of media platforms they accept contributor content, meaning you can write an article yourself about something like that is relevant to your product and to expertise, and start like publishing on different platforms. So here it's a question of research. Okay, what kind of targeted audience I want to get, what kind of media they read. Then you go to the media platform and analyze what kind of headlines and topics they usually cover. And then, like, as a result of this analysis, that you can come up with a topic that that will likely gain attention of the editor. Then you get connection with this editor just on LinkedIn, at Twitter, and initially start just engaging with him, like comment, like, and after like some time you can try to pitch him your idea, like say, hi, I'm this and that, I'm building this product, I have been previously mentioned in this and that article, for example, some of the commentaries you did, I have an idea of writing a piece.
All right.
I have an idea of writing a piece about this topic, and I have some exclusive data insights about this. And then, like, you will get an answer. Okay, if they're interested in that, you go write a piece, and then it's published under your name.
I want to shift gears a little bit and talk about one of my favorite topics to talk to founders about is grit. And if we define the grit in terms of other words like resilience and stick-to-itiveness and risk-taking, and a word I mentioned to you earlier because it jumped out at me was courage. It's obvious, anyone listening to this, that you've got a lot of grit. I mean, where you,
Thank you.
moved, moved. Well, first of all, just trying to do startup and successfully running a business in St. Petersburg, and then pulling up stakes and moving to New York, and then of course starting your own firm in New York, and so for me the question I always want to ask people, and the answer is different for every founder, but every founder for sure has grit like you, but their story of where their grit comes from is different. So where do you think your grit comes from?
To be honest, I think I just try to approach like this, like fear inside logically and make an agreement with myself. Okay, what are the ways I can like feel more calm? And of course, there are times, like in business, for example, when like you see, okay, some of the agreements are ending soon. You have not secured anything new yet, and you start have this internal fear. I have to take care of my team. I have to pay salaries, and I'm responsible for all of that. So over time, I just like analyzed financially what would be like what would make me feel calmer at these moments when, for example, that we have like less business accounts that like than we usually have. And just over time I built out kind of a reserve fund, or I don't know how you would call it, which I know would cover several months of salaries of my team, and I would just like have this time to like get new business. So I think like financial planning for me, both in business and for life, helped me manage all those fears a lot. So, for example, even when I was moving to New York, I knew that I have a significant safe fund that would allow me to live couple years at my expense levels in New York, even without any income. And this, like having these thoughts, always like helps me calm down. And in the end, it never even happened. Since I moved to New York, I always continued to have like some kind of cash flow. Of course, like over time it grew, and initially compared like to Russia, price value in New York is absolutely different. Like in
Right.
Russia, when I was living like in a huge apartment in the center of the city, like was having a very like high level of life. Of course, after I moved to New York, initially I had a drop in the quality of life, but I just had an understanding that long term the like number of opportunities and upsides in US is like much higher compared to Russia, because also like having grown through the period of 90s after Soviet Union fell in Russia, and like talking a lot to my grandparents and parents who have gone through these like devastating economical events in Russia, I always felt that every 10 years something so crazy happens in Russia that's like it's not a place where you can build like a stable and long-term life. And especially given like all my career was focused on the international market, I have never really worked like for company that was targeting Russia market. I felt that for me it would be better like to move to a place like US, and this kind of like financial planning helped me go through my fears both in terms of personal life and business.
I think that's really interesting to put it in the context of moderating or controlling your fears. That's a really interesting way to talk about it. I've had a lot of difficult startups where, and I'm currently still running my ninth one, and there are many times in those startups where I I would try to sleep and I would feel the sense of cold sweat and and because something was really wrong and 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 I hate that and I very much want to try to quickly get things right, partly so that I can have a normal life and sleep. and
Mm-hmm.
and so what you said really resonates with me in terms of having things controlled in such a way that you avoid those really scary times.
Yeah, I think it also helps a lot to be in a community of founders, and like not only online but as well offline, and to build like a closer connection with those founders, because sometimes, especially in the age of social media like Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, it and all the media, when you like read all those stories, sometimes it feels like everyone is just doing so perfectly and so great. Every person has a crazy success story. No one is struggling. But when you start building closer connections with other founders in the industry, you just get to see and understand that a lot of founders go through so many challenges, and then you start feeling okay, I'm all right. Everyone is going through it. And when you just share those like experiences and support each other, it also helps a lot.
I agree. And that kind of networking is extremely helpful and valuable. And I hope that, sharing these kinds of things through this podcast helps all of us as well. I think that what you've described is just fascinating. Your story is really, really an interesting one, and
Thank you.
it's it's great to have had you on here and to hear it. So I really appreciate that.
And do you have a podcast with yourself sharing all your experience, or is it all described in your books?
Well, I did I wrote the book in mostly in the first person, um, which is different than most entrepreneurial books. But I feel like, and I'm oversimplifying, but I feel like most entrepreneurial books are in one of two categories. There's the one which is somebody who's bragging and talking about how they, had a unicorn and they sold it for $1 billion and nothing ever went wrong with them, which isn't probably true. And then
Mhm.
the other uh, frequent book type is very didactic, and that's there's probably really good information in there, but it's just hard to read because it's so dry. So what I tried to do was to tell stories, and the the most interesting stories are ones where something was wrong, and
Mhm.
and I had to try to figure out how to fix it. and how to, move on. And sometimes that meant pivoting, and sometimes, it had I had to do something else. But um, so yeah, yes, it's my stories. I did try to do a a podcast of my own early on in this, designing successful startups, where I told kind of my story, and it wasn't just the story of startups, because I have to tell it in the context of, because I have quite a grit story. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I lost my leg when I was 16 to cancer, and it's a very rare kind of
Wow.
cancer that is is usually fatal.
Mm-hmm.
And it did spread, and I lost a lung as well 3 years later. And so at that point in time, I was told I had zero chance of survival. No one had ever survived that.
That's crazy.
Well, that was
You
very
did.
tough. That
You
was
did
very tough.
survive.
and 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 I figured out a way to sort of, deal with it. And I did a TED talk about that, by the way. And and then when I, was surviving, and actually, you know, got married, and now we've been married for 45 years. Um, I I felt like, okay, I was ready to try to take on a startup, because I felt like, and it's true, nothing that could happen to me in a startup was as bad as what I'd already been through.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, and so and so I could, put things in perspective. So yes, I did do a two short uh, uh, podcast episodes where I was telling my whole story.
I'll make sure to listen to it.
And here are your toolkit takeaway. Number one, niche down to compete. Victoria went from facing 1,000 PR competitors in New York to just 5 or 10 by focusing exclusively on the blockchain and digital asset space. When you narrow your target market, you're not just reducing competition, you're deepening your expertise and building a reputation that spreads through word of mouth. Number two, start founder led PR before you hire a firm. Until you've raised a seed round, do it yourself. Subscribe to platforms like Quoted or Help a Reporter Out for about $20 a month. Respond to journalist requests and commit to publishing one thought leadership piece per month. Build your credibility as an expert first. It costs almost nothing and it compounds. Number three, build a fear fund. Victoria manages the emotional roller coaster of entrepreneurship through financial planning. She built a reserve that covers several months of team salaries, so when business gets slow, she can think clearly instead of panicking. That cushion isn't just financial, it's psychological. Now go identify the one niche where you can be the obvious expert and start building your reputation there today. And that is our show with Victoria. The show notes contain useful resources and links. Please follow and rate us at podchaser.com/designing successful startups. Also, please share and like us on your social media channels. This is Jothy Rosenberg saying, TTFN, ta-ta for now.